one of the most important skills for being able to really appreciate nature and understand nature and get the most from our time in nature is to awaken our ability to hear and to listen. And there's a difference between just kind of having your ears taking in whatever information they take in compared to really listening at a deeper level, to hear farther away, to hear more subtle sounds, to be able to track multiple things at the same time through your sense of hearing, and being able to get a feeling from your listening, feeling into the emotion of what's happening. And this is obviously very useful for things like bird language. When you hear a bird making a call off in the distance and you want to know what it's saying, birds communicate with emotion more so than they do with like syntax and linguistics, the way that human languages work. And so the more that you can feel into it, there will be a feeling behind the sounds that the birds make. And it's a listening skill that just takes practice. This is how I think about sensory awareness training. It's taking a skill that normally happens unconsciously, something that happens automatically without thinking about it, and that really most people do very poorly. There's very little in the world that we live in today where we're so disconnected from nature with all its sensory stimulation and this strong need that nature gives us to pay attention, to look, to listen, to feel, to sense, and to put the pieces together. We can take each of our senses and isolate them and work on them individually. And it's kind of like we're taking something that happens unconsciously. We all have habitual ways of seeing, hearing, feeling, sensing the world around us. And these patterns typically change very slowly through our life. And it happens just through natural learning as we're growing up. We experience different things and we get these habitual patterns around how we use our senses. And if you then, as an adult or as a developing human at any stage of your journey, if you want to then upgrade your sensory awareness, we need to do it in a sort of methodical kind of way. You can't just try and do it all at once because you'll overwhelm yourself. If you try and approach sensory awareness from the perspective of all of our senses all at the same time, you can make some progress that way. But what I have found is that for a lot of people, it gets to this point where it's like, it's too much and it gets overwhelming. And then you get outside and you sit down, and because you're focusing on too many things all at once, you end up getting discouraged. And you're out there for a few minutes and your mind just wanders and your mind gets very busy and you're thinking, oh, I'm not doing it very well. I'm trying to, open my peripheral vision and listen and do all these different things. And so a better way to do it is to make it easy on yourself. This is always a mindset. When you're out in nature and you're learning any skill and you find that what you're doing feels difficult, ask yourself, what can I do to make this easier? And in terms of growing our sensory awareness, one of the easiest things that you can do is just to remove some of your senses from it. So you're not going to work on every sense every time you're out there. I did a video a few weeks ago looking at the visual sense, and so you might do that for a day, or you might even focus on the visual sense for like a week or two, and then you come back and say, okay, I've made some breakthroughs with my visual sense. I've had some perceptual shifts in terms of building a new habit is really what you're trying to do. You're trying to practice a sense in a new way that lets you use your senses more deeply than what you're used to. And if you do it enough, with enough repetition, that becomes your new default. it becomes your new habit. So you build a habit, and the whole idea here is not to give you more things to think about. It's to give you less things to think about. It's to let you do something more sophisticated with your senses without having to think about it. And that just comes through practice and little shifts. When I work with people in mentoring, I talk about this in terms of instincts, because that's really what we're doing. We're building a new instinct, or we're activating an instinct that has historically always been there. It's inside our biology, but it needs to be awakened, and through practice. One of the senses that a lot of people struggle with is their listening sense, and it's a very common story for me when I encourage people to get outside and spend some time just listening to nature, just being with your sense of hearing. You know, you get outside and you're all excited to hear some birds and some wind blowing through the leaves and all this kind of stuff. And then, a car rolls by, and there's so much judgment about the sound of that car being there, that it pulls you out of the moment, and it makes your mind very busy. So I'm just going to sort of walk through and actually do this and kind of explain what I'm doing as I do it, because there's a process that you can go through. So the first thing I do is I close my eyes. I close my eyes and I just start the process of listening. And I spend a few moments tuning into what kind of sounds I hear around me, just in a very general kind of way. And as I'm doing this, I'm also feeling inside myself. I'm feeling for, where do I have tension in my body? What is the rate of my breathing? How smooth is my breathing? Am I really relaxing into it? Because the thing is that listening is, yes, it's a hearing sense. It's something that you're doing with your ears. But if you really want to go deep into listening and really reach the deepest levels of being able to hear what's happening in your surroundings, that also comes from your body. You know, I think about it as like listening from my heart. And if I just sort of go into my heart and find a peaceful feeling, that peaceful feeling amplifies your ability to listen, because it gets you out of your head. If you really want to be a good listener and you want to hear things happening further away in nature, you want to hear patterns in nature, or if you just want to be a better listener for the people in your life, it's really important to get your mind to become quiet. And so when I was first getting into this, I had a little group of friends who, we were all doing this stuff together. We were all interested in getting connected with nature and opening our senses and getting closer to animals and learning about plants and just generally being closer to the natural world, living a more harmonious life with the natural world. And we spent a lot of time talking about coming to a quiet mind. And my understanding of what it means to find a quiet mind has really changed a lot over the years. Back when I was first getting into this, I used to think of a quiet mind as being like the absence of thinking. And I would look inside my mind for a quiet mind. I would look inside to sort of almost like analyze like how much thinking is there, how busy is my mind right now. And what I've learned over the years is that in and of itself, looking for a quiet mind, looking for and monitoring how much thinking there is going on, that actually makes your mind busy. And it actually makes it harder to get into a quiet mind. And a truly quiet mind, which is a prerequisite for being able to really listen, actually comes from a feeling. And what I learned is that if I look for a quiet mind, not by analyzing my thoughts, and instead just finding a peaceful feeling, and using that when you get into a quiet feeling, have you ever been somewhere in nature where you were just in a really beautiful spot, and maybe it was right around sunset or right around sunrise in kind of like the blue hour, where just things were really calm, and maybe there was just like a moment where a fish jumped in the water and made a splashing sound, and it just, you were so connected to that sound that it just transported you into this beautiful, quiet place. That is a quiet mind, and that is where you are really in your sense of listening. And that is what you're looking for. It's that feeling of openness, connectedness, quietness that comes when you lose yourself in nature. So I close my eyes and I tune into my body, and I just start the process of finding that peaceful feeling by releasing any kind of tension, just relaxing into the moment, feeling some of my breaths, and then I notice what kind of sounds are happening around. Listen as far as you can in each direction. Don't just listen in front of you, listen behind you, listen out to the sides. Listen for the loudest sounds that you can hear. Oftentimes the loudest sounds that we hear are human sounds, and it's really important to not get caught up in that. Like, just imagine yourself as like a raccoon, and a raccoon living in the city is not going to judge the difference between a human sound and a bird sound. To the raccoon, they're all important. They're all part of the soundscape that raccoon is experiencing. And so they have to just accept what's there. And you'll find that if you just accept the sounds that are around you, even if it's just cars driving by or planes flying over or, people doing construction, just allow yourself to hear it and listen for what's beyond it. Because if you listen beyond it, there's other more subtle sounds. So don't get caught up in judgments about sounds that you deem to be not part of nature or not beautiful. Just allow yourself to experience them and listen for what's beyond it, because there will be a lot beyond it. Listen for the quietest sound. Listen for sounds within sounds. And listen for the pace of sounds. I mean, right now I'm listening to, I talk a lot about rhythms. And right now I'm listening to the rhythm of the wind. And it's sort of steadily blowing in this relaxed, gentle pace that kind of fades away like a really big wave, and then it builds again as the next wave rolls in. And the more that you can start to listen into these dynamics of sound, that the sound of the wind is alive, and it moves through, it builds, it crests, it topples over, it fades away, and then the next one rolls in. I notice the birds singing, the flycatchers making their calls. I hear the cicadas in the trees, the goldfinches fly over. So you just get out there and just listen for a little while. That's really all you have to do. And as you listen, notice that the feeling in your body starts to shift. When you first get out there, your heart rate's probably a little bit elevated because you were just walking. You're sort of getting settled. But as you sit and listen, there starts to be this feeling emerging, this relaxed, quiet, peaceful feeling. And it might just be a little bit. You might not be fully immersed in it when you first start practicing this, and that's okay. Just notice what's there. As long as you can notice the contrast between where you started, and then you listen, and then there's a deeper feeling. Even after just 5 minutes of doing this, tune into that feeling and let that feeling carry you deeper into your listening. What's happened is your mind has quieted down a little bit. So I really just wanted to encourage you to do this, to just get outside and just remind you, because you probably already know this. You've probably had times in your life where you've sat in nature and you felt that quiet. And you know how nourishing that is for your life, to be sitting there and just connecting with yourself and taking that time to let go of all the things that are normally distracting you. And don't look for a quiet mind in your head. Look for a quiet mind in your heart. And when you notice that peaceful feeling emerging, that feeling of quietness emerging when you're walking along a trail or when you're sitting next to a river, pay attention to that feeling and go into that feeling. Let it take you deeper. Let it send your ears out to the horizon. Let it send you to a deeper state of connection with nature. And if you haven't done this in a while, just go do it. Go try it out. Go give yourself some good time to just drop into this. And I think you'll find that it brings really good things into your life. One thing that I've been doing recently is going for sunset walks by the river. And, I get that 45 minutes every evening to just be with that peaceful feeling. And I notice that I sleep better at night. It gives me some time to reflect on my day. And I stop frequently to just listen and observe and connect with my surroundings. And so just a friendly reminder to go out and do that. And I would love to know what you're experiencing in terms of your listening sense and getting your ears to open, and that connection between your deep listening and a feeling of quietness inside. Can you feel that connection between those two experiences and how they feed back into each other? And wherever you are, I hope you're having a great summer. This can be a busy time of year, and so give yourself that gift of quietness and deep listening. And I think that's really all I want to say today. I'll see you in the next video.